call at 7.
Judith is on now.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I hear a voice.
Oh, what do I hear, bud? Oh, it's on my bureau. What's that?
Oh, it's at Sherry's house.
All right. DA, do you think Mike is hopping on?
I think he's trying to get on. I don't know what's going on. I just
Okay.
texted him.
Actually, I'll be on call at 7.
If you want to go ahead and start and we can wait, that's fine.
Right, yeah.
I hear a voice.
Oh, it's on my
Sherry's house.
DA, do you think Mike is hopping on? Yeah. Oh,
I think he's trying to get on. I don't know what's going on. I just texted him.
that was delayed.
If you want to go ahead and start and we can wait. He's on.
I hear a voice.
Yes.
Hi, Mike.
All right, I'm gonna mute everyone real quick just so Mike or Mark can do the opening.
All set? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough website March 15, 2020 at https://www.southboroughtown.com/. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. https://www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately assess the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable, and it stops.
Do you hear, does everyone else hear the multiple? Okay, Mark, I think you're playing it on different speakers.
No in-person attendance of the members of the. I only have this. Is everyone muted?
Yeah, everyone was muted. Does everyone else hear the multiple? Okay.
Hello? Is everyone muted?
Yeah, everyone was muted. Does everyone else hear that? It's something with your feedback, Mark. I think it's doing it multiple times.
It only started doing it since you started recording.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone muted?
Yeah, everyone was muted. It's something with your feedback, Mark. I think it's doing it multiple times.
Now what happens if I talk now? There's no feedback.
It sounds fine now.
Yeah, for some reason, I think the recording was causing some sort of feedback.
Melissa, unmute yours and see if it does it.
No feedback. Hello?
Okay.
Oh, it's Melissa's.
No, I just undid it.
It sounds fine now.
Okay. All right. Whew.
I think it might be the live streaming rather than the recording.
Causing some sort of feedback.
Okay. All right.
Melissa, unmute yours and see if it does it.
Feedback.
It's still going. Okay.
Hello? So you're recording and live streaming.
I paused the recording. It's just live streaming.
It's fine
Yeah,
now.
All right. I think it might be the live streaming rather than the recording.
Causing some sort of feedback.
Mark,
Is
are you sure
anybody
you don't have
playing the live streaming?
speakers anywhere?
you're muted.
I'm thinking if I should just stop the live stream and restart it again,
I'm thinking so.
or. All right, I just stopped the recording, but it's still live streaming. Okay. Maybe that'll work.
Muted.
I'm thinking if I should just stop the live stream and restart it again.
Thinking so.
Or. All right, I just stopped the. Okay. We're all set. I figured it out. We're good. Okay. We're all good to go now.
Reread?
Yep. No, you're maybe.
Okay. Okay, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18 of the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner: www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No person in attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means.
All right. So I'm just gonna go through the roll call of who's here. So if you just want to say aye when I call your name. So Judith.
Mute.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna unmute everyone now since our craziness is over. All right. So Judith.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Russ.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And then we have with us from the trustees of reservation, DA Hayden and Mike Francis. And myself, Melissa Danza, where I don't know where I went. So Mark, I don't know if you want to do an intro or if you want me to, but I can start if you want.
I thought it might be best to baseline everybody and bring everybody up to speed as to where we are at this point in time
Okay.
with
so,
Chestnut Hill and the trail closing and
Yep.
planned reopening.
So I think as everyone has been kind of following along, myself, Mark Purple, and the Board of Selectmen with the trustees of reservation, I've been trying to get the Chestnut Hill trails open again, to be, I guess, congruent with what we believe is true with the CR, and also just for the enjoyment of those citizens in Southborough and others who would enjoy it. So we've come up with a plan with the trustees, which I'll bring up a map in a little bit, and maybe Mike and DA can go through that a little bit more of a plan that'll kind of benefit both parties in terms of the safety of those who are using the trails and also the farm workers. So it's a series of roping off the farm area and limiting parking to the parking lot only, not having parking along the roadway, so that we can kind of keep those who are going in the trails down, and then also having some volunteers helping and kind of making sure that that happens, that the parking is limited to the parking lot only. Because I think, you know, as we saw the beginning of this pandemic and the stay-at-home order, that people have been flocking to the open space areas. So there are going to be an onslaught of people that probably will attend and want to visit Chestnut Hill. So at least for these first couple weekends, I think we'd expect to see a good amount of people going there, and we want to make sure that everyone is safe and have, you know, a partnership with both parties. So we've come to this agreement, you know, as kind of beneficial to both parties, because I think everyone wants the trails to remain open while keeping everyone who's visiting and working there safe. And then that's kind of where we're at now. Mark, if you want to have DA or Mike talk, I think that might be the time to do it. But
Yeah, I guess I'd like to hear what the plan is to reopen. I know that there's some talk about putting signs along Chestnut Hill of no parking. I understand the Southborough Police will be monitoring that and patrolling that to enforce that. I understand that there's the parking lot, once it's filled, it's full, and then people need to, you know, not try to fit themselves in there, if you will, and come back at a later point in time. And I also understand there's going to be some roped off areas.
Correct. Just to kind of start this all off, I cannot tell you how wonderful this partnership is with the town of Southborough, with our the selectmen, Melissa as the representative for the Conservation Commission, the police department, and a very terrific group of dedicated volunteers, along with our team at the trustees, has really just, this is an unprecedented move. It's the only property we're doing this out of the 119 properties across the state. So we're really excited about it. And we're really excited to be able to open the trails in a very safe manner for everyone involved. The opening will be tomorrow. And what has happened is that our stewardship team has signed the property. They have done all of the roping and the staking. The farm team has ensured that any of the animals on the property are fenced in. At some points, they're double fenced in so that people will be able to view the animals, but they won't be able to go up close. Mike has a map that he's going to show you of, how the trail system has been, configured so that everybody can move about. And we're particularly pleased with the involvement of the town, because on the couple of properties that we have reopened in the area, we had really serious incidents of traffic backups, blocking roads, people parking in individual residents' driveways and on their front lawns, and we've had to reclose properties. And it's because people are just so excited about getting outside, and they're so interested in being, out in the woods with their friends and their families. And we've just experienced this incredible crush of people coming to the property. So it was very important to us that everyone was safe and that it was a controlled environment. And I'm very much looking forward to the fact that that's going to be exactly what we planned here in Southborough. So tomorrow is the opening, and we'll see how everything goes. We'll be monitoring everything carefully, and then regrouping again on Monday to see how things went. We don't expect that the weekdays will be as busy as the weekends, for sure. So we just, are thrilled about this, and, thank you for the partnership. Mike, did you want to review the map so everybody sees how this is working? Is that something you can pull up, Melissa?
yeah, I'll share my screen now.
Thank you. I just would like to echo what DA stated about partnering with the town, and we appreciate Melissa's ability to kind of bring those from the townhouse together with us, and we had a very positive meeting the other day, so thank you. All right, so I just put together this map, and hopefully it'll give you a visual on where the ropes are keeping, what areas the ropes are keeping closed. So as you can see, so I don't think I'm able to use my pointer, but as you can see, the trailhead parking is the parking that will be open, and that can accommodate 20 cars if people are parking, appropriately and close enough to each other. And the thick red line represents the rope that we installed along with the stone wall along parallel to Chestnut Hill Road. So the farm stand / CSA parking lot will remain closed. And what we're trying to accomplish here to keep the staff and animals largely, in the barnyard, to keep them safe, is to keep the curious public out of these areas at this time. Typically, we really look to engage the public in these areas and interface with them, but this is what we're trying to accomplish. So the area that's labeled this area closed is what we're trying to keep people away from these areas. So there's a rope running parallel to the blue line, which is the farm road that represents the blue trail. And that rope is strung all the way to that intersection and then kind of closes off the base of the black trail, the overlook trail there. So if you can scroll up on the map or maybe zoom out, Melissa, right. So all of the other farm trails up into the woods will be open. The Maple Loop, the Oak Loop, and the Orange Shortcut Trail. The section of trail that comes out of the woods to the upper pasture, we labeled out the Overlook Trail. People will still be able to walk out of the woods at that point, but rather than having them follow the Overlook Trail all the way kind of down the hill to along our shared boundary with the neighbors, we'd like to direct people northerly along that really thick, solid black line. That's the line that I added to this trail map to show both what we'd like to accomplish during this opening and also in the longer term. Something that Melissa and I had spoken about weeks ago that we also wanted to come before the Conservation Commission to review is really looking at that Overlook Trail along with a few other trail improvements or trail proposals, and just share a couple of trail proposed updates. One of the things that we've been trying to help our neighbors with is the loss of some of their privacy, not related to the closure, not related necessarily to this opening, we hope, but really kind of as we welcome more people to the farm. It's been wonderful. That's what we aim to do. But people following this trail are stopping along the boundary and taking photos of their houses, and in some cases walking into their yards, and just it's really become a real inconvenience and a loss of privacy. So that's something that they've been concerned about. We would love to come before the Conservation Commission, perhaps at your next meeting, to review our proposals for the long-term trail plan there. But otherwise, I think this map is really illustrating what we're hoping to accomplish to make this a positive opening for this weekend and beyond. As indicated, the police will be posting no parking signs along Chestnut Hill Road and patrolling the area as needed, and some helpful volunteers will keep an eye on things really during what we expect or anticipate to be the peak hours on the weekends between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Within that window of time is what we typically experience as our peak weekend hours at other busy properties. Of course, it's affected by the weather. So I believe this Sunday is supposed to be a bit overcast, rainy. So that will help in the sense of not drawing people out.
This also provides access to those who are coming from the Aqueduct Trail. And then Melissa, if you're able to just move down a little bit so we can show the across the street and the Beals Loop,
This one?
Mhm.
where we have the new kiosk that the Eagle Scouts built. Also, all of that is open for people to come through as well. So there are, multiple access points by foot. And then there's certainly the access point by the parked car. The signage in the parking lot clearly says, if the lot is full, please come back at another time. So, it's very clear to everyone, what the process is if you're bringing a car to the property. We've also seen that there are people who park in that lot and then walk down Chestnut Hill Road where they're supposed to go across the street into the Beals Preserve. So, that impacts some of the parking as well, but we're hoping that, those who come to that parking lot are coming to walk the trails at Chestnut.
In addition to the parking lot sign, we have another large sign, 24 inches by 36 inches, that is posted on our trailhead kiosk right at the parking lot, advising people about social distancing. It's a standard sign that we've installed at some of our other properties that we've been able to open as well.
So is the red identified Beals Loop open or not?
Yes, that
It
just
is.
happens to be the same color. So
Okay.
as the thick red line. So that thin red line that's labeled Beals Loop is indeed open and connects to the other regional trails, the Burroughs Loop Trail.
Okay. Now, does the sign at the trailhead speak at all about, masks are encouraged or anything like that?
It does not speak to masks. It speaks to social distancing, safe distancing, physical distancing of 6 feet. I don't think there's a way.
There's an illustration on it of, someone with their arms, outstretched, kind of giving that indication of what the 6 feet is. It's a sign that we're using at the properties that we've reopened. And, it's interesting when you watch people's behavior, they sometimes will oftentimes disregard smaller signs, but we've all been out monitoring our properties over the weekends, and we find that this particular sign people stop at because it has that illustration element in it. But it does not include anything about masks. It's strictly about social distancing behavior.
Mhm. Any questions from other commission members?
I have some questions and comments, if I may. First, I'm thrilled to hear that the farm is finally going to be reopening for public access tomorrow. It's great news to hear. I think there's a little bit of procedural stuff that we should probably take care of. So far we haven't talked about the conservation restriction, but that's a very important aspect of this. And the Conservation Commission addresses trail closures in some detail, as does the land management plan that's currently in effect. And the town purchased the CR for quite a bit of money, as we all know. And I thought it had been put in the care and control of the commission, but we are actually the grantee. The actual CR document, we're the grantee, and we have the responsibility, for enforcing the CR. So, as a commissioner, I've got to point out that there's been a violation of the CR, and I think we need to acknowledge that, talk about what happened, and talk about how we can avoid this problem coming up in the future. Without really getting into the weeds about the specific language here and there or our legal opinion. I guess I would like to hear some acknowledgement that under the CR, we're supposed to be working as partners here. And this really was a unilateral decision that we were informed of after the fact. And our input and our agreement as required under the CR was never sought and was never given. And I would like to hear a commitment moving forward that trail closures and other changes like this in the property that the CR requires an agreement with, that our agreement will be sought in accordance with the CR. You know, if a closure is going to be more than 72 hours, there are 3 different places between the CR and the land management plan that require that the grantor and the grantee agree on that. And I want to underline this, and I think it's an important discussion that we have. And once we have that discussion, then, you know, I understand you've spoken with lots of other folks around town, but under the terms of the CR, these changes to access to the trails require the agreement between the grantor and the grantee. I'm thrilled that we are now, a month later, going to try to start working as partners on this, but let's, you know, I'd like to hear, I guess, the trustees, you know, address the actual CR issue. Let us know, you know, how did the oversight happen, and what are we going to do moving forward to make sure that we don't run into this situation again?
Mike, do you want to start, or do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, just I'd like to, you know, broadly state that and, you know, reaffirm our commitment to working with the Conservation Commission. I believe that we, you know, have a long-standing relationship with the commission, and, you know, have, you know, been, you know, reaching out to the commission on various farm matters over, you know, the past several years. So, you know, thanks for bringing that to our attention, you know, both in this meeting and leading up to this. I really think it's, you know, the situation is a reflection of the circumstances, you know, of the time, and the timeline certainly, you know, wasn't in line with the specifics of the CR. I do believe, you know, we attempted to follow the spirit of the CR, but certainly the timing, you know, can be addressed in a more direct manner.
We did have a meeting 1 week after the closure was announced, where, you know, that certainly would have been the appropriate time to do this. And I just, you know, I want to find a way forward to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I mean, when we work together as partners, and the most recent example I can think of is with the Hoop House. You know, the Chestnut Hill Farm and the trustees, and Mike, I think you actually came with the Chestnut Hill Farm folks to discuss that with us. You know, as you recall, we were advised by SVT that it's not allowed under the CR, but you came to us as partners and discussed it with us, and we worked very hard to find a solution to move forward to make it, you know, possible to install the Hoop House. The unilateral action on this caught a lot of folks around town by surprise. I certainly caught an earful from a number of people, which is why I'm making sure that this is brought up in a forum that folks in town can see, just so that it's addressed and acknowledged that the CR represents, you know, a $5 million investment in the residents of Southborough. It's a very important responsibility that the commission has taken on, and I just want it to be seen that we're, you know, we're underlining this and trying to come up with a plan moving forward so that this doesn't happen again. I guess, listening to what you say, it sounds like you're acknowledging that, you know, the CR requires, for a trail closure lasting longer than 3 days, an agreement between both the grantor and the grantee. And, you know, we can easily foresee, we hear various predictions in the news, you know, during the summertime or during the fall, you know, perhaps we'll have a resurgence or something like that. And, you know, we could foreseeably, see some sort of new guidance or order from the Department of Public Health or so forth. If we get there and the trustees want to see some closures or changes to access in the trails, I mean, can we get a commitment that you're going to be doing this in accordance with the conservation restriction? It's pretty explicit. You can have an emergency shutdown on your own judgment, of course. You've got to let the commission know within 48 hours. And if the trail closure is going to be longer than 72 hours, it requires the agreement of both the trustees and the commission. Neither of us can unilaterally shut down the trails. Do you agree with what I've said there?
So Ben, I am acknowledging what you're saying. And I'm also saying that, we completely understand the perspective that you're presenting. And it's not a perspective that's unusual to us, in that there are many properties within the trustees organization where townspeople and individuals have gathered together and raised significant funds to, partner with us to save a property from being developed, and that the trustees either then own that property in full, or they hold the CR on it, or, many various scenarios. And we are very respectful of those relationships, and we're very respectful and very appreciative of the relationship we have with the Conservation Commission. I think in this situation, we really did feel as though we were following the spirit of the CR. It's a completely unprecedented situation. We've never closed a property in a 125-year history of the trustees. So you can imagine that, what we went through as an organization in making this decision, in collaboration with Governor Baker's office and the Secretary of the Environment, and, many, many, many other experts. We made the decision on our end, and prior to closing the trails, we did send letters out to everyone, and we did contact the conservation agent. The point that you're making about it being closed for longer than 72 hours, I understand, and we all understand that. And you have our commitment that if something like this should ever have to happen again, which I hope is not the case, we'll get with you very quickly and discuss how we should move forward. But I want to reiterate that the trustees did this in an act of public safety and public health, and something that we were doing statewide. And it was certainly not to single out or intentionally exclude anyone from our decision-making process. So I just want you to know that, and know that we really work in a spirit of partnership with both the townspeople in which we have properties, and for all of our, visitors to our properties. So, I'm acknowledging what you're saying, and we are absolutely looking forward to moving forward together, should ever, and as I say, I hope we never have to make a decision like this again.
Okay, I'm still trying to parse that. I guess, I'm certainly curious to hear the opinions of my fellow commissioners, but, as we've been made stewards of the CR, I think it is important for us to, well, I guess my preference would be that, we're going to have to be conducting a vote later on to presumably grant our agreement with some form of plan for altering access to the trails. That's required under the CR, and we're going to have to do that. I think that we should have a second vote where we acknowledge that there was a violation of the conservation restriction. I think that's something we need to have on record here in our role as stewards of the conservation restriction. I think that's. I was reading through earlier today. I understand the trustees do work a lot with conservation restrictions. In fact, I was reading the trustees handbook today, And I think we should take the CR as seriously as the trustees do. And I think we should, formally recognize that there was a violation here. It sounds like we have a commitment to refrain from a similar violation in the future, which is great. But, we'll see if others agree. And if they don't, I won't press the issue, but it's something I think that we ought to do. Once the procedural stuff is out of the way, of course, we're required to, for any changes to go forward, both parties have to agree to it. And I do have a couple of comments, concerns, I don't think huge ones, but over some of the proposed changes. But I think maybe we should get the procedural CR stuff out of the way first and then move forward with that, just as a suggestion.
Any other comments from other commission members?
Yeah, I somewhat agree with what Ben has said, but the thing that caught me by surprise was I read the letter, and the letter has gone out. Is that correct?
Which letter are you referring to?
There's the letter from the selectmen, right, about the opening, announcing the opening. And it's Melissa.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's on My South Pro. It's in the public.
Yeah, I understand the level of cooperation between the trustees and the selectmen and trying to get a solution. I mean, that's what that was going on, right? That's how that came about, right? And that's, I think we had kind of stepped on that because it wasn't the selectmen who should have been doing that, right? Aligned with what Ben is saying, that we are the grantees, it's not the selectmen, right? We have another conservation restriction similar, and we potentially get stepped on that one, right? I think we should not only give notice to the trustees. I don't know if I want to call it a violation, because we can talk about that, but I think that the selectmen should recognize that we're the ones, if they want, they can certainly recommend we meet with them, right? But we're the grantees, they're not, and they should really work with the Conservation Commission with any issues like this in the future with respect to this. Now, I know everybody was trying to do the right thing, right? Everybody was in a good spirit, trying to get the trails open, but we just want to make sure that we don't get into this precedent. The selectmen just intervene whenever they think is appropriate, right? That they make sure they check in with us when something like this pops up. And my other question is, what about dogs? Are you allowing dogs to go onto the property? Or has that never been allowed? I don't remember.
Never.
Dogs are not allowed on the property, both.
Period.
Period. Yeah.
Period. Okay, I just didn't remember. Okay.
And I guess, Carl, just to touch on meeting with the commission. So in every conversation that, the trustees has had with the town, I've been involved with. So it's basically been a meeting time issue in terms of talking with the commission as a whole. The selectmen just had kind of brought it up quickly I think at their tax meeting. That wasn't, they weren't expecting to bring it up. So I don't want to, I guess, give the impression that the trustees have been excluding the commission. So in between having meetings and just the time requirements that we've had and trying to post and finding a time that there's these webinar rooms open, I have been involved in all the correspondence.
No, the trustees were very responsive, but it was the wrong organization dragging them in. I mean, I think the selectmen probably should have said, look, this is an issue for the Conservation Commission. We don't have authority on this. You got to talk to the Conservation Commission. Now let's get this, do it correctly. I think they just kind of stepped on us. That's my opinion. And the letter went out, and I don't know if we don't vote to approve this, what are the selectmen going to do?
Right. I agree.
I mean, they committed us without consulting us. I mean, we're going to approve it. I'm going to vote to approve it, right? But it just it leaves us in a spot that we have to do something, you know, so I don't know.
I guess
I can't
would
tell you
offer-
the number of emails and text messages that I've got in the last 24 hours or so about the trails being opened and people reading it on My Southborough and wanting to know if the commission was aware of it. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
I mean,
been
it's-
flooding my
Yeah,
inbox.
it's, you know, I don't disagree with what happened, right? It's just that, you know, and we have specifically the golf course, you know, we have this potential at the golf course of the selectmen, because we've already had this experience, the selectmen wanting to be in on this, right? And we just want to make sure that they realize that conservation restrictions have their limitations, right? So I've said enough. Okay, I'm going to stop.
This is Jeff. I'll just sort of agree with that sentiment. I think it's great that trails are opening. But yeah, it felt a little funny to read the announcement after having earlier read the management plan and the conservation restriction, you know, some time ago. It's like, how can this be announced when nothing's even been proposed? That at least, I mean, I know there were conversations with Melissa, and there were conversations, maybe I assume Mark was involved, but we were, I mean,
Not really.
more or less in the dark as to what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So like, it was very confusing, like how these decisions were being made and announced to the public without anything having been proposed to who I was under the impression was the, you know, the other body that needed to work with you guys to make the decision.
Yeah. Now again, this is not my problem isn't with the trustees. I think the trustees have been very cooperative, right, on this. Right? It's just that and Ben has some point about, you know, they should be more focused on us, but you know, they're going to respond, and I understand that they're going to respond to the group that pops up on their radar screen, and it was the selectmen this time. Right? So, anyways, that's enough.
From my perspective, I mean, clearly this is unprecedented times, and there's no script for this, right? Nobody's been through this. Nobody knows how we're going to get through it. You know, we're all in this together. We're finding our way day in, day out. You know, there's new information every hour.
Yep.
And when the CR was written, they didn't put a provision in for a pandemic and what we should do. Right? It wasn't in there. And I think the trustees and working with Governor Baker and the health department of the state, you know, acted probably appropriately initially, maybe a little heavy-handed, and should have involved the Conservation Commission, because by doing that, closing the trails at Chestnut Hill, it then forced the people that would go there onto our other properties that could potentially cause a health situation there, because action wasn't taken at Breakneck Hill or the golf course or the Southborough Forest, right? We didn't do anything with the trails there. So, you know, maybe we should have, I don't know. We reached out to our Board of Health for some guidance, and they basically got back and say, well, people should practice social distancing and using common sense and those sorts of things, and didn't recommend closing those trails. But then having some trails closed in town and others not closed was sending a mixed message, right? So I think from my perspective, when you close the trails, as you had the right to for 48 or 72 hours or whatever, we should have got together and tried to hash out, you know, what's the go forward plan, what are the ramifications of this, and, you know, how can we work together maybe to come up with a solution, which I think we're looking at tonight. Right? We have a solution here tonight that looks like it may very well work, and, you know, we're gonna you know, move forward and act on that. So from my perspective, that's my 2 cents as one member of the commission. You know, and again, as I say, you know, I see people walking up and down my street here. We don't have any traffic in my neighborhood, and everybody's practicing social distancing. They're crossing the street when they come approach to somebody else coming the other way. So I think people are going to behave correctly and act correctly. I did have a concern with generally the trails in town where you can't be 6 feet apart. Hopefully they'll kind of pull over where they can get distance a little bit and let somebody go by, and, you know, try to practice, you know, good public health and social distancing.
That's been my experience at Breakneck Hill.
Yeah.
That's been my experience at Breakneck Hill and the Beals property.
Yeah, my wife is now started to make masks. She's got probably 300 masks cut out in our house right now, waiting for elastic to come that just is not showing up for whatever reason.
Wow.
But she has got all kinds of different designs, camouflage designs, flowers, all kinds of interesting things that she's going to be giving away anyways. But any other comments from the commission members?
I guess I had a question and maybe I missed it. The rationale behind closing the Overlook Trail in this particular situation, what was the reasoning on that one?
Sure. Leading up to the closures about a month ago, this was the result of an issue that was brought to our attention by our neighbors in that corner, and they were describing how people were walking along the edge there and really infringing on their privacy. So it's something that I talked to Melissa about, saying that I would put together a proposal to her, and then this all happened. The closure and related issues. So
Is that a
really our goals are.
Closure, or is that a privacy related closure?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Jeff?
Sorry, is the closure related to the pandemic and social distancing and fear of that? Or is it really only a privacy related closure?
There are two things going on here. One is we talked with Melissa about coming to the commission to talk about the possibility of making a change on that particular trail because of the issue that the neighbors are having with people walking into their property, photographing shining lights at night. And it's become a bit of an issue up there, to say the least. But for these purposes, we're closing for two reasons. We're closing that section for, we don't want people moving from the farm into neighbors' properties. And there's also a livestock that Mike, tell me if I'm right on this in terms of the edge of the livestock fencing as well. So we want to try to keep, people over in this direction. But the two issues are separate. They just happen to come together because of this, because of the trail closing.
Are you going to propose an alternate to that trail?
Yes, we already have alternates. We've already established new trails, and we have one trail to complete, essentially. One that we intended to establish, but it's only partially completed.
Yeah.
So there is certainly a net gain of places to explore and trails to walk at the farm. So we wanted to take a more holistic view at the trail network and offer.
Yeah, I'd suggest when you have the alternates laid out, then we can talk about
Right.
that. That'd probably be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what they mentioned earlier, that
Yeah.
that this is, opening the trails back up, what can we open and what should stay closed, and then have them come back at a future meeting.
Yeah.
with the proposal to permanently not use the trail close to the neighbors and have something else.
Sure.
Yes, Ben.
Yeah, so this is actually a good time to talk about that. I've spent quite a bit of time reading through the CR, obviously, in the land management plan. So the CR requires that the land management plan be revisited every 5 years. It was last done in 2015. We're due for an update under the CR. And this is the appropriate place to deal with any changes to the trail network that you're proposing, for reasons other than the pandemic. If you're proposing some permanent changes, that's the place to, according to the CR, that's the place to capture those changes. And again, it's something that's supposed to be done in consultation with conservation, and also a process where it goes through the land management plan is then we get input from Open Space Commission as well as some others. But it's due anyhow, and this is a great time to do it, and the appropriate place to make those changes.
Sounds like the timing is lining up.
Yeah. So I just gonna, it sounds like there's not interest in making some sort of formal finding of a violation of the CR. And if that's the case, I won't make a motion or anything like that. But is that generally where folks sit on this? I don't want to push the issue if there's simply no interest in pursuing that.
So,
Well, I can comment on it. And I guess my comment would be that I personally don't feel that the trustees acted purposely in violation of the CR. I think they were reacting to the COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Baker's edict, if you will, in public health. And I think maybe if there was a error along the way here was them being a little heavy-handed and not coming to the commission and discussing that with us. And then, formulating a go-forward plan, whatever that plan would have been. Maybe we would have kept them closed for a month and a half or 2 months. I don't know. Or maybe we would have come up with this plan. But, we could have worked, in partnership and come up with something, instead of sort of the angst that we've gone through over the last month with various townspeople being upset, neighbors being upset, pressure on other properties, that sort of thing. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and just to be clear, while I'm saying it's a violation, and I believe that it is, if you read through the CR, I am 100% confident that it was made with good intentions and in good faith. And I don't mean in any way to suggest that it wasn't. I'm in favor of sort of more of a letter of the law, something that's even addressed in the CR handbook by the trustees, that many CR violations are completely, even unintentional, but they still feel must be addressed. But again, if other folks don't want to pursue it, then I'll stop beating on a dead horse. I brought it up, and I'm glad I did, but I understand if we're not going to move forward.
And I mean, I guess,
I did have one. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Carl.
No, it wasn't me.
Oh,
I think it was me.
yeah, I mean, I understand your perspective, Ben. But I do concur with Mark that this was a decision or a procedure, a process that was set in motion because of some pretty significant factors that were very much outside of our control. I think if we go forward, and I agree with Carl, I don't actually like the word violation, because I think if we use the word violation for something in this situation, it's then very hard to kind of use it in future when it's a much more serious and much more deliberate, decision of, actually going against not only the spirit of the CR, but the letter of the law as well. So I think, when we have the minutes from this meeting, and I don't know, I can't remember, Melissa, if we just do the recording or if there's minutes as well. I think, maybe the minutes is somewhere that we can do an appropriately worded statement that says, going forward, we definitely would look for both parties to participate in a very proactive, very constructive dialogue immediately that we have a situation like this. I think the other thing, though, just given some of the conversations I had, I think it's appropriate for us to speak with the Board of Selectmen, either through Brian or through Sam, and make sure that they are aware of the protocols around managing the conservation restrictions, because otherwise I think, we will be in, as you say, in this situation again, where there's something just happens, and if people are not that familiar with all of the protocols around those CRs, then we could find ourselves in another situation with another group where the Board of Selectmen either intentionally or unintentionally go forward and don't follow that appropriate procedure. That's my thought.
I'll agree that I don't think there's necessarily any need for a violation vote or anything like that. I don't know what that would accomplish exactly, so I'm not sure there's a lot of merit to it. I'm more concerned with, on the ongoing basis, how seriously the conservation restriction and the management plan is going to be observed. So, I mean, we also just heard maybe there's some new trails being constructed, have been constructed. It also, I think, clearly says in there that any new trails or changes to trails should also be, as I think Ben just mentioned, in consultation and discussion and agreement with the commission. And I don't think we've yet heard about any of this. Maybe we haven't, I missed it, so sorry. But I think it's important that that going forward, we acknowledge the requirements of this plan and how the plan is structured, and that we are discussing these things on an ongoing basis.
We actually like you guys.
Absolutely.
We believe you, of course.
No, we do. We really like you.
We like you too, Carl.
Oh,
I was gonna make the funny analogy. But what you did initially, it was the hot baby. It was a baby in the hot pot. Of course, you break the window. That was the kind of the analogy I'm coming up with. Of course, it takes a lot to break the window, but you need to do it.
So we like you so much, we want to talk more.
Yeah.
So I guess the business left at hand here is coming to agreement on the.
I'm unmuted. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry, you want to say something?
No, I just.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the business at hand here is coming to an agreement on the opening of the trails at Chestnut Hill. Right, so there's a proposal on the table with plans for signage, police patrol, roped off areas to protect the farm workers, animals, and public as well. Separation is good for everyone. So I believe the the next step here is to move forward with a motion and a vote.
I'm sorry. There's one last thing that I wanted to bring up. I promise I'll be brief. And
okay. Everybody had gone silent, so I don't know if you're all on mute or just wanted to stop.
Just with the issue, the issue of the volunteers. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that to understand more about it. From what I understand so far, I've seen the emails from Melissa, sending out a sort of a solicitation for volunteers, and it sounds like she's been doing the scheduling and management of that. And I'm unsure what exactly the volunteers will be doing. And, I want to talk about, why the need for volunteers. And, we've had many discussions previously about spending Melissa's time and our budget on CR matters, on exactly this kind of thing. And should this be, should the management and so forth of the volunteers, should it be handled by Melissa if we're going to go that direction, or should the trustees have a role in managing this as well, and that kind of thing. But I'd like to hear what are the trustee, what are the these volunteers supposed to be doing in the parking lot?
I can talk to that quickly. For those, we've kind of split it into two separate, I guess, issues, just the management of the parking lot, which literally can be someone just in a lawn chair sitting there, making sure that when the parking lot is full, that new people do not park along the roadway. And that's where the trustees and DAs kind of mentioned that it's really just Saturday and Sunday 10 to 4 is when they've experienced that in the past, and where they really need the help to do so. And then doing, what while someone may be in the parking lot, whether it be the same person or someone else, every so often kind of going out into the trail area and ensuring that people are staying away from the roped areas. You know, just kind of doing a quick survey of the land and making sure that people, you know, at least from what you can see, are kind of observing social distancing and also staying on the marked trails and not trying to escape into the fenced off areas.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
Yeah,
Melissa,
I guess, no, go ahead. I'm sorry, excuse me.
would there be a way to get one of the volunteers to do the schedule for you and report back to you?
I mean, the schedule isn't necessarily the difficult part.
Oh, okay.
Just getting, because I've kind of just set up a Google spreadsheet, which, you know, I'm going to share with Mike. And then, you know, so if something does go wrong, he can have their information to call or vice versa. And then it's really just having people who are willing to probably sit there for a couple hours a day, you know, or who are willing to put up the time to do so.
Oh, okay.
Have the trustees gotten involved in trying to get volunteers and assisting with this?
We spoke with our engagement manager today so that she will be, and I haven't even had a chance to tell you about this, Melissa, so that she is letting folks know that those volunteer opportunities exist as well.
Okay. You know, because we tried to do we'll call it a soft opening for this week, so we don't have that initial wave of people that are coming in. I didn't necessarily post an announcement on our Concom page, kind of asking for others, because, you know, I think it's also good to have people that are familiar with the site versus just kind of a general volunteer system. But that in itself, it's greatly appreciated if someone is willing to do that. I mean, the parking lot is not difficult. You know, literally bringing a folding chair and sitting there and calling PD if, you know, something comes amiss. But
Oh, boy.
A tattletale.
yeah, yes.
I'm thinking of sitting there, I'd have my little $5 sign.
There you go.
Donation.
And Melissa, the perceived need for this is, oops, we stepped on a tail.
Excuse me. Can you put me on mute since my dog is barking? Thank you.
So after talking with the trustees, you know, it was really that concern, and Mike can maybe talk a little bit more about this, about people, you know, especially this time of year with more of the baby animals not staying out of the roped areas, even though they're fenced off now, and sneaking through gates. And then after talking with the police department, you know, and what we've seen in other properties is just people parking along the roadway, which is just causing kind of a safety hazard. So that's really the basis behind it.
Right, that's correct. I mean, just as Melissa stated, keeping the people, the visitors away from those fenced areas, the animals that are behind the fenced areas, and away from the staff, you know, that are working, interacting with the animals at the time. It's a busy time on the farm with the birthing of animals and getting them acclimated to the pasture, so they will have their full attention directed to that operation. And also, as we've experienced at other properties, just being able to monitor and observe and understand when and if the crowding or the overflow of vehicles, you know, begins to happen. So it's really just observational.
I think that I've said, you know, I'm happy to volunteer on one of the days, and I am familiar with the trails up there, and I've volunteered for the trustees before. So I think the only thing and I can talk to you about it offline, Melissa. I think the only thing that we need to be careful of is what's the escalation process, because, you know, I think it's important that if we are volunteering, that we don't, you know, that those individuals don't then feel that they're put in a difficult situation of having to turn people away. And I've certainly, you know, I've done volunteering before and had some not easy conversations with people where they've, you know, tried to, not in that property, but in other scenarios where they don't actually understand necessarily what's, the need for restrictions on parking. And, I just think we need to be clear about, at what point do we say, okay, we're going to get the police involved? Because I don't think we should be having our volunteers put in harm's way for doing that, that role for the community.
Yeah, and I think it'll also help and make it a little bit more clear that the DPW is going to put like those wooden, I call my sawhorses, just the long strip with the two pegs at the end with no parking signs along the roadway as well. So it's a little bit more clear than just a cone on the side of Breakneck that they can drive over. So it's a little bit more clear that there won't really be physical space to park along the roadway as well. And sometimes it's really just the person, kind of looking around if people are kind of gathering in the parking lot, being like, okay, make sure you're, doing your social distancing appropriately. And if something does come amiss, that you have the ability to talk to the people at Chestnut, at the farm area to make sure that, they're aware of something that may be wrong. Oh,
DA's on mute.
there you go.
Oh, thank you. Now that my dog has calmed down. Yeah, I just you're absolutely right that we would never want a volunteer to feel as though they have to enforce anything. I mean, that's not their role. Their role is to, let people know when a parking lot is full and to observe what's going on the trail so that we have that information. We're collecting this data throughout the state on properties that are being, opened by volunteers. And our team also does a route every Friday and Saturday, twice a day by our properties to determine if there are issues and things. Because as I've said, we've run into some absolutely crazy issues with some of these reopenings. So, but never should a volunteer be in a position of feeling like they have to enforce anything that would not be appropriate.
Anybody else have any comments, points to bring up?
One last quick comment, just follow on the discussion of the land management plan update. I guess I would just ask that the trail rerouting and so forth that's happening right now for the purposes of responding to the coronavirus, that those trail closures and reroutings are understood to be temporary for the duration of the pandemic, and any permanent changes, we'll go through the process of an update to the land management plan and review by the appropriate town bodies and ultimately agreement between the commission and the trustees. That's the process outlined in the CR. And is that our understanding going forward on that?
Yes, that's what we were explaining. Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure there's any wiggle room around that, honestly.
Yeah,
No,
and I guess to clear that up, Ben, that was going to be addressed, that those trail closures along the overlook, but with the pandemic, they just didn't, I guess we didn't get around to talking about that being the next option yet. So they, that hadn't been done, that had been talked about, oh, this is upcoming. So just I think that's been kind of unclear. So just so you know.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, clarification points?
I'm done.
Ben, are you done?
He is now.
Yes, I'm done.
All right, so I believe that the commission needs to take a vote on the reopening here of the trails as configured by the trustees.
Yeah. You need a motion?
I do.
All right, so move.
Second.
Okay. And I think we have to do roll call in terms of all in favor, right?
Yep. Do you want me to call them or you want to?
You can do it, Melissa. It's fine with me. You're taking the notes.
Judith,
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, Carl?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
Sherry?
Yes.
And Mark?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, is there any other business before the commission tonight?
I just need someone for Saturday, just saying.
Hmm.
I think, DA, would you agree that Sunday will probably be rained out, or would you still rather have someone come by?
I mean, I think you just have to look at the weather that morning and make that decision. That's totally up to you. If it's pouring, no one's going to be out there.
Yeah. Okay,
I can do Sunday regardless. I don't mind.
okay,
Sorry, I can't do Saturday.
that's fine. I think I have some people for like random hours, but not necessarily the majority of the day. So if anyone wants to do that, just send me a message.
Okay,
And I'll coordinate with you tomorrow, Melissa, so that you have Jessica's information as well, our engagement manager there.
Awesome, thank you. All right,
all right, do I hear a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
And Carl, we like everybody on the commission too.
I would expect as much.
That's because this is recorded.
All right.
I need a second.
Second.
Sherry, second.
all right, Judith,
Aye.
Ben,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Carl,
Aye.
Russ,
Aye.
Sherry,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.
All right, well, stay healthy and safe, everybody.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. You all
Have a good
too.
night.
Good night.
Keep your head down. Yeah.
Mark, I have to ask you, that's not a real palm tree and ocean, is it?
Yes,
What
it
do you
is.
mean?